Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mountainside Podcast. Our guest for this episode is Avalanche Safety expert Mike Wallace. He's joining us today from Apex Mountain School to help educate us on avalanche safety and what you can do during these winter seasons when you're in the backcountry. Welcome, Mike. Happy holidays to you, man.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's awesome to have you. I'm super excited about this episode. I think we're going to talk about a lot of valuable information today that can help our listeners, because our listeners are very much outdoor people for the most part. And if they're not, they like to be educated in it at least. So yeah, we're going to talk about, we specifically brought you in to talk about some avalanche safety, and you're an expert in it, and from Apex Mountain School. And I can't wait to hear. I'm going to learn for myself today, because I've never had any sort of avalanche training, and that's one thing I do with my listeners is I kind of learn with them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, cool. It's good to be here. Just a caveat, I will say that from maybe a humility standpoint or whatever, we use that term expert kind of lightly. So,
okay.
yeah, I've spent some time in some avalanche terrain operationally and recreationally, et cetera. Always wearing that expert cape is a little
Well, I don't
nervous.
think anybody can really be an expert in the backcountry, right? You're always going to come up with some sort of situation that nobody's probably ever been in before. Like, what was the guy in Moab that was rock climbing that they made the movie, and like the rock fell on his arm and he ended up having to amputate his own arm?
Aaron Ralston.
Yeah.
If that was the guy, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. So you never know what can happen back there, I guess. But
yeah, totally.
I guess being as best prepared for it as you can, and that's what you're here to talk to us about today a little bit.
So there's a saying that we always had. I was very fortunate when I started getting into this realm. I moved to Colorado in '93, and I was very fortunate in that I started working with some folks in a restaurant that were also getting into the telemark scene and wanted to explore the backcountry, et cetera. And right out of the gate, we had that saying that says, expect the worst or plan for the worst and hope for the best. And, that's kind of how we approached pretty much everything we did throughout the years. And
that makes a lot of sense.
That's the best you can do,
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny on the other side of that. We kind of had a running joke amongst our crew that we would be like, hey, so... the conditions are changing a little bit, but come on, man, like, how bad can it be?
Right.
And then sure enough, Mother Nature comes in and says, I can make it pretty bad. Like, how salty y'all feeling today? And, that was kind of an inside joke that, be careful with that one, because it can get pretty bad.
Especially if you're at elevation or something, and for people that haven't spent any time there. You can get these microbursts of weather, no matter what season it is, summer, fall, winter. Winter's a bit more extreme, but it can change in temperature in a 40-degree range in a matter of 30 minutes, maybe even quicker than that sometimes.
Definitely. Summer especially. So,
yeah.
For your listeners that are out there, they know if they've been up on Longs Peak or around the area and you're above tree line in the summer, rapid changes come in quick. In the winter, fortunately, I guess I should say, but if you're monitoring the weather and you're checking the avalanche advisory and you're keeping tabs on it, especially if, 2 or 3 days before your trip and you're watching it pretty close, I'll have to say that the forecasts are pretty accurate. So you at least in the winter, you can take some comfort in knowing that if you're watching the forecast carefully and you know where you're headed, and you can kind of get a pretty good idea what you're headed into. So
that's awesome. That's a great tip. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff avalanche related. But before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background? You kind of touched on it here a minute ago, and how you got started in avalanche safety and what you do at Apex Mountain School. So a couple different questions there, but.
Okay. Yeah. So, I grew up in Northwest Florida for the most part. Grew up on charter boats and sport fishing yachts. Was a surfer and on a swim team, and so was used to getting out into the elements as a kid and spent a lot of time outside. And of course, back in those days, the summer camps were a big deal. So my parents would always ship me off, to the mountains in North Georgia and South Carolina for 2 weeks and get rid of me, and we'd do backpacking and things up there. So kind of always been in the outdoors and enjoyed being in the elements. But in 91, 92, I graduated and was the disillusioned college grad and had some friends out here in Colorado. So I ran out here for 1 year is all it was going to be, 93, 94, and I never went home. So
I think that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's why the population just keeps growing and growing and growing.
No doubt.
It's a good spot.
The running joke was, this was in the early 90s up in Summit County, and that's where I live now. And, it was like, oh, yeah, my car broke down here 3 years ago, and I haven't got it fixed.
Yeah, it takes a lot to get over the pass in a car these days. Yeah.
So again, I took the restaurant job at Keystone, and like I said, fell in with a really strong crew of people. I was also working at another restaurant in Dillon, privately owned restaurant there, and just a great group of people. And that's kind of how I started cutting my teeth. I had a pass to Arapahoe Basin and skied a basin 5-6 days a week, and we were poking around in the backcountry near Arapahoe Basin, Loveland Pass. And then a year or so went in, and then we started climbing all the mountains around Summit County and bagging peaks and skiing the bowls and chutes and couloirs in the spring. Spring skiing got to be a real big thing for our crew, and we spent a lot of time out there. And then started venturing into skiing some 14ers around the state and getting some bigger lines, etc. And we had our missteps and made some mistakes and had some near misses, but fortunately no major hiccups.
Did you ever find yourself in an avalanche situation? I mean, is that what kind of spurred like, shit, I need to be trained in this? Or
yeah, I mean, it was always on our minds, especially like I said, we had some near misses, a few in the backcountry, mostly around Montezuma area and stuff, kicking off a few things and taking some rides. And had a friend and her dog take a ride on Quandary once. It kind of caught us off guard. So yeah, you're out there. You're gonna see this stuff. You're gonna run into it. And again, we were in our minds. We felt we were pretty conservative, trying to make some conservative decisions. Again, one of the restaurants I worked at was the hangout for a lot of Keystone patrollers, and so I was befriending a lot of those guys and gals and touring around in the backcountry and kind of sneaking some stashes with them back in the day when it was pretty a little less. Got to be careful here, but a little less. Looked upon as far as poking around.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good learning curve. We were all sharing information, and again, I'll say this word, many times maybe today, but we didn't call it a collective intelligence at the time, but we were practicing that approach.
Sure.
So a lot of discussion and group dynamics, etc. But anyway, so that was kind of my background. And then in 99, I jumped on the ski patrol at Loveland. A friend was recommending that, hey man, why don't you start ski patrolling and whatnot. The bartending scene was getting pretty intense, and I needed to kind of dry out a little bit. And
sure.
It was eating into my ski time, really. So, I was going from 100 plus days a year skiing to about 30 or 40 just because I was drinking too much and hung over. And so, so jumped on ski patrol at Loveland, and they had just put in Chair 9 up to the ridge. And so that my timing was lucky, really. Was able to jump on their team that was exploring that terrain and help develop a lot of the terrain up there on the divide with again, and just another great crew of knowledgeable people. And
so do you still do that as a part-time career?
I left Loveland in May of 2019 at the end of the 18-19 season.
Okay.
And started teaching full-time.
Really?
And so that's when I jumped in and hooked up with Scott over at Apex, and I've been teaching with them the last 2.5 years full-time last 2 years, part-time the year before that.
That's great.
So.
And for our listeners, can you explain what Apex Mountain School is? It's basically everything that I've read, and I'm going to screw this up probably, but it's basically a backcountry school, whether you're a split boarder, a cross-country skier, a backcountry skier, ice climbing, rock climbing. It's basically mountaineering all encompassed into one, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I'm kind of the rookie there still. It's been, I haven't been there that long, but the crew there is fabulous, and they teach, they do regular guiding. You can just jump in and hire a guide. They'll take you out skiing, climbing, whatever. But they organized some educational courses too. If you want to learn some basic mountaineering, they have a course for that, and they'll key in on how to travel. Alpine travel in the winter, alpine travel in the summer, roping up, some crevasse rescue, or how to set a belay line, how to set a fixed line. So a highly, highly skilled and knowledgeable crew there, and they're totally willing to share everything they know, and whatever course you're interested in. Scott's got a wide range of products there for learning.
I think it's so valuable too, and I say this whether you're new to fly fishing or hunting or backcountry skiing or something like that, hire a guide, spend that money. You're going to learn so much. You're going to be so much safer, and it's just, you're going to have a better experience. And then when you go out and do it on your own, you're going to know what you're doing, So I urge all of our listeners, I know it's a bit pricey at first, but, it'll really help you.
Yeah. I like to think of it as, look at it in terms of an investment. And
sure.
And try to think in terms of value. When I spend money, it's kind of like I try to make it not as frivolous as it may look like, although it probably is. But
I think we all do.
You want to look at the price point, but if you think of it in terms of value and do a little research, and if you can feel like, yeah, this is time and money well spent, then it's exponentially worth it.
You might actually save some money on some gear that you don't need, or something like that.
Yeah. Get some tips. That's another big.
Don't talk to the guy at REI and think that he's an expert. You know what I mean? Because every one of those guys I'm not bagging on anybody that works there, by the way. I'm just saying everybody's kind of an expert in that shop, and they all kind of have their own opinions. I bet you if you went through the entire staff and asked each one of them the same question, you'd get some different answers. So
yeah. Well, I used to work retail as well. That was one of the ways I didn't work. I barely got a paycheck at the place I worked at. It was a place it's not there anymore. J. Henry Outfitters in Silverthorne, but It was awesome. Another great.
I remember that place actually. Yeah.
Great, knowledgeable crew of people. We had the ladies that worked there. We called them Team Hot Sauce because they were all just rowdy chicks. And, as guys learning our way around, we were basically chasing them through the mountains. But that retail part of it was, there's you want to keep your job, and I wanted to have a nice little. I'm
not saying that there's not experts that work there, but I'm just saying, if you're going to get into one thing in particular, whether it's, like I said, fly fishing, bow hunting, go talk to some experts, There's plenty of people here in Colorado that are vastly educated in a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I think that's the nature of just the mountains. You just by the very environment, you're doing stuff in the summer that requires some skill set, expertise, and some key equipment. You're doing stuff in the winter, and so just by the very nature, I think most people that are into it or have a broad skill set. And so if you're in retail, then it makes it kind of easy to sell stuff because.
Sure. You absolutely need these crimp-ons, you need all this stuff. But yeah, so we specifically brought you in to talk about Avalanche Safety on this episode. We're going to have you guys back more often than not, I'm sure, especially after talking to Scott. Me and Scott could have done a podcast last week over the phone, just as much time as we spent on the phone talking to each other. So shout out to Scott Smith over there at Apex Mountain School, and super excited to have you guys in, like I said. And I'm sure that there's a lot more to Avalanche Safety than what, you, as I would call an expert, because you're educated in it, and an idiot like me just talking about it over a podcast, right? So really this is kind of a disclaimer. Don't walk away from this thinking that if you're done listening to this episode that you are going to know everything to keep you safe in the backcountry, go sign up, get your certification, that sort of thing. But what are, I guess, kind of to start this conversation, what are some of the most common situations that people would find themselves in an avalanche situation in the backcountry that they may not know or be aware of?
Yeah, so I'm going to lean on experience, when we were just getting started. And I think it comes down to most people, correctly in a way, they set an objective and they want to go achieve that objective. And they may have heard about it through Instagram, in these days, or someone else talking about it, or just sitting at the bar and go, yeah, I went and got, the dog leg up by A Basin or something like that. And it was awesome. So you go, well, where's that? And then, so you set an objective, and based on that, you just run out the door with your buddies and go and get it. And in that regard, that's where we kind of stumbled into our problems, when we were coming up through our experiences, and that is that we started at point A, which was the car, and then we went up to go get point B, which was the objective, and didn't think too much about what was between those 2 points. And that's where I think most people kind of stumble in and find themselves a little bit over their heads, and given certain conditions, if they're not monitoring that and kind of listening to the mountains, as a lot of people say, Jeremy Jones says, give the mountains your attention. If you're not doing that, then you're going to miss some key information, and that's where you're going to stumble into some trouble.
Sure. Avalanches cause just a remarkable wrath when you see one go off. And I've seen one go off firsthand, which was incredible. I didn't even know what I was watching at first. I was like, wow, those clouds are coming in pretty fast over that. And it was from a distance. So that was pretty cool. But then if you go see the aftermath of one, it's incredible. I mean, they literally, for people that don't know or haven't spent time in the backcountry, and we have listeners from all over the world, so they may not be in the mountains, but it'll literally, boulders the size of cars will get turned up. It'll mow over trees that have been there for, hundreds of years probably, somewhere in there,
Oh, yeah.
And it'll just be a pile of rubble at the bottom of it. And the best example to go see what it can actually do in the force is to go check it out when there's no snow and just see the pile of stuff that's left at the bottom of the mountain or the basin, And it's...
Yeah, we have, anybody that's kind of tapped in is aware of the cycle we had in March of 19. And, if traveling around the entire state, that was one of the remarkable things about that avalanche cycle is it was statewide. It wasn't kind of fixed to a certain region. And so if you're traveling around basically anywhere, if you go to the 550 corridor down near Silverton, if you go even up around Bakerville, if you're traveling up around in there, there's some paths coming off of Kelso Mountain and stuff that have created some massive debris fields. And they're fairly accessible and worth checking out in the summer if you're wandering around, just 150-year-old trees just laying on their side. That's and crazy. Ripped off.
It looks like pickup sticks at the bottom of a mountain a lot of times, That's my best way to explain it.
There's a so like the Y chute that ran over just right next to Copper Mountain there in Summit County. That's a great example. If you're driving to Leadville, none of those trees
pretty
are
much right
buried.
Off I-70 too. I mean, it's right there. Yeah.
So if you're seeing those kinds of, you're seeing those debris fills and the damage that the snow can do, you can kind of get a feel of what these things are capable of. But that was a century plus cycle that we had. So you can kind of see the maximum damage that avalanches can produce, at least around the state.
And we actually have a state program that helps mitigate avalanche. I don't know too much about that. I don't know if you can speak on that, but I think a lot of times they do it from like helicopters or something like that, where they're dropping explosives in. What a cool job. I want to sign up for that. But they're dropping explosives out of a helicopter onto these mountains that are avalanche prone, right? And basically igniting those explosives to cause an avalanche so it doesn't happen. So it's controlled.
Right.
The best an avalanche could be controlled, I guess.
Yeah. And so those are organizations, Department of, or CDOT, is doing a lot of that stuff with, with their resources, explosives from helicopters and other mitigation methods.
They also have cannons too, right? That like shoot.
Right. So there's some artillery. I believe there's still some artillery down around the Red Mountain Pass area, but they're trying to get away from the explosive artillery, and so some great technology is coming around. They have these things called gas exploders or gas X exploders. You can see them up on the Seven Sisters, going up the Loveland Pass. There's some up on Berthoud. They're starting to pop up all over the place. And then there's these other devices, Obelix launchers, where they kind of kick these small explosives out, and they're triggered remotely. The explosives are, that is. Basically you can have an operator sitting in their warm truck, looking at stuff through binoculars and trigger these mitigation methods. So it's a bit safer than some of the Avalaunchers we used to use in the past, et cetera. But
right.
They'll employ whatever means necessary to do the mitigation.
I got to get one of those guys on the podcast.
Yeah, it'd be worth it. You could hear some good stories for sure.
Yeah. Make a note of that, Anna. We'll look one up.
But it's resource intensive and requires a lot of manpower, and it's a financial commitment on the part of these agencies that are doing that.
Sure.
So, but yeah, it's absolutely necessary. And of course, the objective there is to hopefully trigger many smaller avalanches so that you don't have those larger ones messing with infrastructure and holding things up, et cetera. So
because we in the past, and specifically, was it last year, 2019, when we had? You were just speaking on that a minute ago about all the avalanches that we were having. Mm-hmm. There was a couple that closed the highway several times, that crossed the highways and major corridors, Yeah,
correct. We actually, from Loveland at the time, we watched them shoot Bethel, if you're familiar with that path. And they dropped some charges on it via helicopter. It buried the road, put it under 20 feet of snow or so. So
that's crazy.
We were trapped up there for a little while where they dug that out. And then, of course, the 550 corridor down Red Mountain Pass area, but they were having a lot of action down there for sure. And then in the 10 Mile Canyon, of course, they had some stuff hitting the road over by Copper Mountain. So it was a pretty serious event. In the world of avalanche workers, in the discussion in those circles, everybody was just kind of like, oh my God, can you imagine just being alive, seeing a cycle like this?
Yeah.
There's people that have been in the avalanche industry and in operations for 50 years and they had never seen anything like it either. So it was pretty significant.
Intense. Yeah, it was interesting to watch for sure. So who's most at risk? Obviously it's going to be your skiers, snowboarders, snowshoers, that sort of those winter sports people. Not that there's not stuff that happens in the spring too, is another big misconception, right?
Spring, things shift gears in the spring when the temperature starts warming up. The storm cycles are a bit different, so a little bit different treatment method and risk hazard assessment method for the spring than there is the winter. But still some hazard to concern yourself with and look for avoiding.
But basically, anybody that's in the backcountry doing a snow sport, literally, you could be driving on I-70 and be at risk. Really, I think that's why CDOT's in place, is to help mitigate some of that. But
exactly. So if you're traveling in the mountains, you're exposing yourself to a risk, and so that this idea of risk hazard, where there's a real risk, a perceived risk, and then this idea of exposure to that hazard. So that's kind of the game that we play in the backcountry is balancing those two elements.
So it's risk assessment, a lot like a military mindset almost, or something like that.
Kind of, yeah. It's like you take the architecture of a lot of these operational approaches, and that's what recreational avalanche education's done, is taken this operational framework and scaled it to a recreational application to help recreationists get out there, have some fun, achieve their goals and reach their objectives, but do it in a more calculated way. Certainly way more calculated than we were doing it in the late 90s and early 2000s.
So what are some signs that anybody could watch out for with education or without for avalanche like Telltale Signs. Obviously, weather patterns, heavy snowfall are going to be, that's common sense, right? But what are a few other things that people could watch for?
Just familiar yourself with the terrain. Again, you dive into a lot of detail in the courses of naturally, but just be mindful of where you're headed, when you're headed there. Definitely check in with the Avalanche Center. We're very fortunate here in the state of Colorado to have the CAIC and the Friends of CAIC that helps fund that agency. They have many forecasters in the field, still trying to cover an enormous amount of terrain. But checking that advisory and getting to know how that advisory works, understanding their messaging tools, that's a big part of what we teach in the courses. Understanding those messaging tools, how they work, and how to translate that into reality, kind of what we call ground truthing when you're in the field.
Sure. Can we touch on that a little bit? Anna, if you could pull up their website. I think it's, I'm drawing a blank right now. Do you know the website address by chance?
Yeah, it's if you just do a Google search for Colorado Avalanche Information Center, it'll come up.
That's what it is.
It's a government website, and so I can never remember the nuances of the actual link. But yeah, there it is. Perfect.
Way to go, Anna. Jeez. Fast.
So fantastic resource, and just the products that they're putting out are fantastic. But the key point there is just familiarize yourself with what those products are, how they're relaying information to you, and how to make sense out of those things, so that you can translate it into what's really going on in the field and what you can expect.
So is this a situation where you could particularly pick a spot out on the map and say, I'm going here, and look at a map and say, it'll give you different color codes or something to tell you what kind of danger you might be in? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. And so they use the North American Avalanche Danger Scale, and it's a color-coded scale. There's number ratings, so you may hear someone say moderate or level 2 or it's yellow today. But we encourage everyone that the most necessary part to following that piece right there is those colors and those ratings are associated with a specific avalanche problem. And different avalanche problems have different characteristics, and they're formed in different ways depending on the weather patterns, etc. And they're located in different places in the terrain. And so just going on these colors alone has been kind of a messaging challenge, I believe, and sort of the educational and advisory realm. So if you're looking at these colors, you have to associate these colors with the specific avalanche problem, and that's all in the advisory. So it's the avalanche advisory is a three-pronged thing, and you can't take a couple of pieces on their own and get a clear picture.
Sure, and expect to be safe, right?
Yeah. So
the unexpected can always happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So you want to look at the rating is kind of the intro, but then you associate that rating with the problem or overlapping problems in the zone that you're looking at, and then you need to dive into the summary about the snowpack and the location and the weather. So that's the three-pronged part. Associate that rating with a problem, and then dig into the summary, and read what these forecasters are writing, because they assemble these things with a lot of care and as much data as they can assemble. So that's a key piece of the message, is that three-pronged approach.
Okay. And do you know how they collect this information? Like I've seen, just in photos when you guys are teaching a school, you guys will literally cut a snowbank so you can see the different layers of snow and maybe what's ice below it, or however that works. Is that how they're gathering their intel? Or
yeah, that's one piece of their intel. It's called a snow profile. And, these come in a myriad of different levels and depth, pun intended there. But how deep you want to get into the snowpack, but what you're looking at as far as grains and crystals, etc. And that's a piece of the puzzle. And then they do column tests. But again, that's a piece of a much larger picture. And
sure.
So they're taking observations into account, and on that observations note, if you're out in the backcountry, you'd want to visit the site and explore how to submit observations because they're hungry for data. They're covering a large range of mountains and a massive piece of terrain, and so any data that you can submit to the center is appreciated. It doesn't have to be super fancy and super technical. A photograph with a description of the conditions you saw and the weather conditions you saw is good. They take that into account. It's very important. They use that to build their forecast. So it's a multi-pronged approach as far as building these forecasts.
And how early do they start collecting this information? Is there like a set season, like, okay, we're going to start putting information out in October 15th or whatever that date is?
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of have a little joke. It's like the winter starts at the first snowflake. So, when those first flakes are hitting the ground, whether it's late September, early October, whatever, are they melting off or are they still there? And at what elevations and at what aspect? In the education realm, we call it tracking the season's conditions. So you're just keeping updated on what snow's falling where, how much, where's the wind blowing it, is it melting away, is it still there, and even you go back to early October.
There's spots where the snow never melts, people.
Yeah. Well, the Avalanche Center will fire up, and even as educators and hopefully as backcountry users, recreationists are starting to watch. That first report comes out. If you sign up for the email list, that first email comes out and says, "Hey, we're going to start putting up regional forecasts at this date. Start watching it," because they've been monitoring the snowpack again at first flake. So they'll have as detailed as they can get. They'll have a forecast up on day one.
What are some things, if you're going to be in the backcountry, that you want to have in your backpack? Some things that you can carry with you to help you stay safe?
The basic is the TPS, Transceiver, Probe, Shovel. And, these are kind of after the fact tools. If you're using your beacon, kind of an old school term there, but if you're using your transceiver, your probe, and your shovel, then you've kind of already made your mistake. So that's rescue equipment, and it's necessary rescue equipment to get your partner out in terms of if they get caught in an avalanche.
Sure.
We like to say the best piece of equipment you can take into the backcountry is your head, a clear head, and have some knowledge. But as far as gear goes, other than the transceiver, probe, shovel, it becomes personal preference. If you want to, kind of dig into your budget and go the airbag route, et cetera, there's good discussions on that. Those things are very helpful, and they're running.
For our listeners that don't know, can you explain what that is and what that device does? And we're going to dumb it down piece by piece. We all know what a shovel does, but other than that, like the beacons and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So the transceiver is a electronic device. The newer ones are digital. If you're in the market for one, you definitely want a 3 antenna transceiver. All the manufacturers are making 3 antenna transceivers now. So it's a device that sends out a signal, and it'll also receive a signal. So if you do get caught in an avalanche and you get buried, then your transceiver hopefully is on, and it's transmitting a signal. So your partners can turn their transceivers to a receive mode and then locate you in the snowpack. The next step then would be to deploy your probe, which is an aluminum device that comes in sections. It's like a glorified tent pole, basically.
Sorry to interrupt you, Anna. I believe if you go to the show photos, I think that there's a photo that has like all these items we're talking about laid out on the table or something like that.
Well, let's have a look.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Mike.
That's okay.
Keep going. I just wanted to.
So the probe is this kind of glorified tent pole. They come in sizes from 200 centimeters to up to 300 plus centimeters. And you deploy that, it locks into, its full length mode, and you use that to basically poke into the snow, and you're literally trying to find your partner with that probe and feel them in the snow. And so once you locate them with the probe, then the shovel comes in. So, you're digging them out. And it's not a process you want to engage in by any
No.
means. So, but we go into detail on that. Any avalanche rescue course, a full day course, we'll go into that in detail and help you use those pieces of equipment with efficiency and effectiveness. But that's critical. You don't just buy those things and shove them in your pack and head into the backcountry. It takes practice.
Sure. And then I've always called them PFDs because the only time I've ever used one was when I was stand-up paddleboarding in the ocean. But it's an inflatable, basically it has a CO2 cartridge, right? And you put it in your backpack and it inflates around your head area?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so that's an airbag. There's a couple different inflation methods with those and budgetary issues. But some of them have compressed air cartridges. Others have fans that inflate the bag at an incredibly fast rate. And the idea there is to, if you feel yourself getting picked up and you're in a slide, you pull the ripcord on that thing and you activate your airbag. And that makes you a much larger entity in the snow, basically. So it helps keep you up on top of the surface of the debris as you go into the snow. It can protect you as far as the design of the bag. It can kind of wrap around your neck, sort of protect your head from some trauma. And the idea there is, if I get the term correct, but I think it's called inverse separation or something. There's a physics term for that, where if you take a jar of peanuts and peanut M&Ms and raisins and small nuts and you shake the jar, the peanut M&Ms float to the top, right?
Yeah.
So the larger pieces come up, and that's kind of the idea there. So as this avalanche is moving down the hill, you're much larger than the pieces in the avalanche.
I'd be set. Big guys. So, yeah. It's one thing big guys would be good at, riding avalanches. Huh?
But yeah, so that's the 4 main pieces of gear. But we're still recommending that everybody at the bare minimum have and know how to use that transceiver probe and shovel.
Sure, and then also just some more common sense things. Obviously, if you're in the backcountry doing any of these sort of things, a helmet would be ideal, like a skiing helmet, something like that, right, to protect your melon.
Yeah, it's
always key.
It's interesting you say that, because like from where I'm sitting, that's kind of a foregone conclusion now.
Right.
So many people are now wearing helmets while they're skiing, and it's a good thing. Like especially early season, we've been real adamant about encouraging folks to bring their helmets, even though we're just doing some short vertical to get out on our egress and whatnot. But shallow snow is a factor. But yeah, I think the helmet now is a key piece of equipment. And most bags, if you buy a backpack, whether it's an airbag or not, if you buy a backpack, most of the manufacturers that are advertising winter sport backpacks provide a pocket for you to put your helmet on, and it makes it real convenient. So yeah,
absolutely. And a lot of them take those the PFD devices that we were talking about as well.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask you something. I got to remember this too. Maybe we'll come back to it. What was it?
Yeah, for editing,
going down that road. Yeah. All right. But yeah, so what are some uncommon avalanche situations you wouldn't think of? Like obviously traveling down the road. What are some things that you can carry in your car? I know what that question was. I was going to ask you about first aid kits. It's something that I bring up here all the time. I really like to call them what I carry, more of like a trauma kit, not really first aid. First aid, I think of Band-Aids, and it's got probably 999 things that aren't going to help you if you're seriously injured, right, or have a serious contusion or something like that. What do you guys recommend carrying anything special in that sort of field?
Absolutely. And, and having the benefit of being a patroller, we had our vest where we carried all kinds of crap in. But, with that experience, there are things you can get that can be a huge help, but don't weigh very much. And so you want to play that game, of course. Do I want to carry in a 3-pound first aid kit? What's my exposure and what am I potentially going to run into? So ideally, the basic first aid kit. I actually got a small one that weighs just about 10 to 12 ounces. It's not even a pound. And it's a pre-made kit. I think I got it at Walmart or something. It's like a little mini field travel kit.
Okay.
REI sells some real good ones that kind of tell you, hey, this is this is a decent first aid kit for a multi-day trip if you're going to be backpacking or going on a hut trip for 2 or 3 days. So it has a decent amount of material in there, and they're not that big. So it doesn't take anything to throw one of those in your backpack. If it's less than a pound, find some room for it and let it live in that specific spot every time.
Sure.
Above that, I carry what patrollers would call cravats, and a little wire splint, that folds up pretty small, but you can unfold it and overlap it for a wrist or use it for a myriad of things. It
Sure.
could almost come in handy as a repair kit if you needed to cut it up and need some mesh for something. So, there's people and guides that say, hey, nothing goes in my pack that doesn't have multiple uses,
Sure.
But yeah, that first aid kit is pretty easy to come by.
Yeah, I encourage, if you're looking to build one, medical tape, gauze,
Yep.
splint material.
Yeah.
If you're going to carry a tourniquet, be educated on how to use it. There's a lot of people that misuse those.
Yeah.
And they're not needed in every situation. So
Correct. And you can fabricate a tourniquet with some of these other
Sure.
things too. But yeah, if you want, one of the things we might tell people is, carry gear that matches maybe your expertise or your education level. So if you are an EMT, you're probably already building a first aid kit that matches
Sure.
what you're trained on.
Is that something that you guys teach at Apex Mountain School? That's something that I've been wanting to take, is the medical first responders, I think, or wilderness first responders.
Yeah, the woofer.
Yeah, I'd love to take that course just because I got young kids and I spend a lot of time in the backcountry during archery season. I'm a big bow hunter, and you're running around with knives and broadheads and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a good thing for me to know. And my brothers and uncles and everybody's getting up there in age too, so you run the risk of having a heart attack when you're 11 miles from a road or a four-wheel drive trail. It's a big deal.
No, I think that woofer is key. We highly recommend that. If you're a patroller, you at the minimum you have an OEC, but a lot of patrollers have an EMT. But if that's kind of outside your realm and budget and time commitment, then that woofer course is invaluable, absolutely invaluable.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna look you guys up for that. I'll be hitting you up on that for sure. All right. Before I dove off and started jumping all around there, I want to circle back to what we were talking about before I came up with the first aid and medical attention. Uncommon avalanche situations. You're driving in your car, boom, you get hit by an avalanche. You might as well be buying lottery tickets at that point, right? But if you are caught in that situation, and I think that this is just common, and I think a lot of people don't do it as much as they used to. I think it's kind of an old school thing. But growing up here in the mountains specifically, when you were traveling on I-70 or something, you always had a blanket, a candle, all the normal stuff that you would want to keep in your car.
Yeah, I keep extra gloves in my car. They even tell you, like CDOT puts out their winter travel thing. Throw some energy bars and a small blanket or a couple of blankets, or definitely a change of clothes. Like I have an old pair of ski pants that I keep in the truck because you never really know what you might run into. So like this old pair of North Face bibs that I have, they stay in the truck because I might need to throw those on to crawl around or dig out or everybody here knows how bad the road grime can be.
Yeah.
So extra layers, a blanket, clothes, maybe some food to get you through the night.
And especially it's not so much an avalanche hitting you, but your car might go off the road and you're almost in an avalanche situation where you're buried in snow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it totally depends on the situation. Like, that cycle we had, I know some vehicles were getting hit and pushed off the road. Granted, unless it kind of comes through the windows, at least you have, your air pocket, which is your vehicle. Yeah, but CDOT does a great job of doing their best to keep those avalanches from hitting the road, and when they do, they're doing their best to make sure there's no traffic down there. So,
sure.
I would call that a low probability but high consequence situation.
Yeah. I would say you're more probable to slide off the road and end up in a snow embankment or valley or something like that would be be more probable.
Yeah. But I would say if you want to kind of translate that to the to just basically traveling with your group in the backcountry, like what are some of those things that can catch you off guard?
And if you're not letting somebody know where you're going to is
bingo.
A huge part, So
yeah, bingo.
And as exact as you can,
Mm-hmm.
That's what's great. They're a false sense of safety, so I'm kind of on both sides of the fence on this. But I have one of the Garmin inReaches that connects to your phone, gives you GPS coordinates. Obviously, if the battery dies on either one of those devices, you're screwed, right? Yeah. So you should still know how to read a compass and a topo map and those sort of things.
Yes.
But those things are great too, and they're pretty inexpensive. There's an SOS device on them. A lot of those things where you can call for help, basically, if you get caught up in something.
I actually just got an inReach Mini. Just set it up.
They're awesome, man.
We have part of our emergency response plan at Apex is to use those. We have those preset messages that go to the administration and to some key folks in the organization that are kind of on their predetermined rescue team, et cetera. And then, of course, there's the SOS function. And then I have some preset text just, to my girlfriend, my sweetheart back at home. To let her know, hey, I'm back at the truck, and just to let her know that I am at the truck. And
yeah, they're great. I mean, I think during the holiday or Black Friday thing, I think they were around $200. I think normally they're about $350. And then depending on how much you want to use it and how much you want to be on your phone texting people, I think you can get it as low as like $14 a month or something to have that service.
Yeah.
It's pretty inexpensive.
And it's pretty nice. Like, it's convenient to be able to at least shoot one or two texts.
It really is. I use mine a lot during the hunting season now because I'll mark waypoints, I'll mark wallows, I'll mark certain spots like that, and it's super helpful.
Yeah, it's a nice backup for sure. Just to keep people that kind of that idea of letting someone know that you're hey man, I'm going skiing. It's that on steroids.
Sure. Yeah. And that's key, man. We used to have to do it old school. I'd get my butt kicked if I didn't tell my grandfather or one of my uncles, like, hey, I'm going camping here and I'll be back by this time. They would be pissed. I would get my ass kicked. But yeah, no, those things are great. As far as Avalanche training goes, if somebody wanted to go get some extra training, obviously go to Apex Mountain School, which is located in Avon, or you guys are in Vail?
Eagle Vale, just
Eagle Valley, or Avon or Vail Valley, right?
Well, yeah, there's that little community there called Eagle Vale.
Yeah.
And it's kind of between Vail and the Beaver Creek, and
not far from Denver. Yeah. Super close. Yeah. But yeah, what are the different levels of courses that you can take? I know that there's multiple levels, and what kind of certification do you get at the end of a course, and what are you going to walk away with, I guess?
Yeah, so great question. The American avalanche education system has kind of gone through a change, a good change in the last few years. So on the recreational side, you can get that level 1. Well, there's a 1-day avalanche awareness course, which is a good introduction. And from there, you'd probably want to go to a level 1 course, but there's no prerequisites for a level 1 course. So most courses are 3 days. You may find a 4-day course. Some are hut-based, etc. But that level 1 course is going to introduce you to a decision-making framework, basically, or a checklist, depending on who your providers are. At Apex, we teach the AIARE risk management framework, they like to call it now, and that's a checklist and a framework that's built upon operational architecture. And so it's a key piece, because what we've discovered over the years is that experienced people are getting caught in avalanches as well as inexperienced people. And so it kind of boils down to some group dynamics and decision-making processes and kind of our own human biases that are getting us into trouble. So even with some avalanche knowledge, people are getting caught. So this level 1 course is reinforcing this idea of the group dynamics, acknowledging some of these biases that we have, how we make our decisions. So we teach people how to gather the information that they should have before they go into the backcountry, and that's some weather data, of course the avalanche hazard, which we really dive into in depth, how to read the advisory off the Avalanche Center and make sense of it, and to translate that into your planning process. And then some tools on how to handle these group dynamics. It's very ambiguous. Challenge people to be very real about their assessment with their own desires, their own abilities, what they want. Why are they going into the backcountry in the first place? To align themselves with a group that matches their desires and their goals, so that they can reach consensus.
Don't bring your one crazy friend with you,
yeah.
right?
Well, the idea is that, exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to reach a consensus about your plan and your objectives in given conditions, so that your decisions are good and in line. And there's that collective intelligence and how you're processing data, how you're traveling through the terrain, how you're using terrain to reduce your exposure to the hazard.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so that's
something I didn't really think of before, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, that's pretty much the gist of this level 1 is to introduce you to good decision-making practices, a thorough checklist, and a framework that helps keep you safe. And then,
and is that I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is that in a classroom setting or is that in the field or?
The usual setup is maybe a 1-day classroom. Right now we're in the world of Zoom meetings, so we're doing it remotely.
Oh, that's cool. So there's a virtual option if somebody.
Yeah, and a lot of those.
Great time to do it too. You got all this time to kill, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Or for some people.
Yeah. So, but what at least what a lot of providers have done, AIARE has done a tremendous job. The folks over there, I think Margaret Wheeler and Liz Reeder have done a fantastic job of building this e-learning module that we give everyone access to, so that they can, the participants can get online and basically all the slide decks that we would use or PowerPoints that we would use in that classroom setting have been sort of converted and then expanded on in this e-learning module. So it's about
that's awesome.
4 to 6 hour effort to go through these modules.
And you can find those at Apex Mountain School's website or something?
When you sign up for the course, give you access to those modules. And they're pretty much required is a strong word, but we like to say they're required to have those completed before you get into your classroom or your Zoom session, and definitely before the field. Because it's a fire hose, and most Avalanche courses are like that. We just turn on the fire hose, hit you with all this information, and then when we get in the field, we just curl back around and revisit all that information and put it into context and get it to some relevancy so you can use it and put it in your daily practice.
That's great. So then if somebody wanted to take it a step further and go, how many levels are there? I mean, does it ever end or?
It never really ends. But as far as investing in courses, you can take the level 1 course, the recreational level 1 course, and
those aren't Avalanche sound effects, by the way. It's just the heater kicking on.
Oh, okay. And there's a set kind of curriculum and these points that are set to hit in each one of these courses. And so the level 1. Then the rescue, to reiterate rescue practices and techniques.
So that would be a level 2 course then? Or?
Well, the rescue course is a separate course. So that's an 8-hour course. It's a full day where you spend the day with your instructor just going into detail about different rescue practices, dialing in the beacon. How to practice with your gear effectively is a big piece of that, so teach you some tactics there. And then expound on that rescue component. And then there's the level 2, recreational 2 that you can take, and that one is basically building on the tools that you learned in the level 1, and it's nice to have a season or 2 under your belt before you take that level 2, because you'll get much more out of that course if you've had some experience practicing that framework. Stuff, yeah, and the key is to come in with some you having used your field book and having had some group dynamics and making some plans that you learned on the level 1. And then we go into a lot more depth of, some more snow science and kind of geeking out in that snow pit and expounding on those column tests and getting a little more science into it. But the overarching part of the level 2 then is this idea of uncertainty in the backcountry, applying those skills that you're developing from the level 1 into more unfamiliar terrain, and to kind of help with that growth process of your experience and knowledge and kind of competency in the backcountry. So just expanding on that tool belt that we built in the 1.
That's great. Well, man, thank you so much for hitting us up on the Avalanche Safety and just opening our eyes to it. And I urge anybody to go check out Apex Mountain School. Preserving the backcountry, public lands, parks, even the city is a big deal to us here at the mountainside. I know it's a big deal to you guys at Apex Mountain School too. It's one of your top priorities. What are some things that you guys see that people could do better just in general when they're using public lands in any season, winter season as well, but just some common mistakes, and I think a lot of it is just miseducation or not being educated on how to properly take out trash, or thinking that somebody's going to clean up after you, or chopping down trees, or making hazardous situations.
Yeah, that last point right there, hazardous situations, is going to be a big one this year in the backcountry, because there's going to be so many people traveling, and then there's that risk that people will be traveling above you, or maybe kicking off some slides that might hit you and your group. So just being very mindful of that. But yeah, just it's this idea that it's kind of two-pronged in my opinion. There's a cultural aspect to that where we really just need to be respectful of other user groups. I know everybody wants to get out there and achieve their objectives, but since the COVID thing hit, we're really loving our wild areas to death.
We got a lot of people that are visiting from other states or outside of our regions too, to come experience that.
And it's crowded out there, and some accidents that are happening are because more of the experienced folks are feeling the need to get away from the more crowded areas, so they're pushing into more unfamiliar terrain. So, that's a factor that we're considering. So, just being respectful, pick up after yourselves, pick up after your dog, of course. We've heard a lot of these things ad nauseum, but we
hear it all the time on here, because I ask this question about every guest, and it's always trash and dog shit.
Yeah.
Or the dog shit bags anyways left on the trail.
Yeah. It's okay to throw it over there, but just pick it up on your own. But no, just, being respectful of each other, like engaging in conversations. One of the things I like to do at trailheads is I travel by myself sometimes, so I'll engage in a conversation while we're getting our skins on or putting my things together if there's a car next to me, and just ask, hey, where are y'all headed today? What's going on with have you guys seen anything in the weather, or just
and offer to help people out if you see anybody in distress. It's like kind of an old school thing here that I see. For example, I had a lady down on the trail the other day, slipped on the ice, and literally by the time I got to her, there was 3 or 4 people that had just passed her.
Not helping. Yeah.
Leave your East Coast mentality or West Coast mentality a little bit, and just be respectful. You're not in an inner city anymore,
be respectful. We run into snowmobiles and stuff while we're traveling, and I got to tell you, being kind of in the avalanche industry, I meet a lot of people that own machines and use them and use snowmobiles to get in the backcountry. They're so much fun, but there's that classic little conflict between the human powered and the machine folks. But
sure.
I got to tell you, the culture is really getting better in that regards. Early on it was kind of like a sort of a war out there, but and 90% of my encounters, if the people hiking, the human powered folks, just kind of move to the side of the trail, yield to the machines, 9 times out of 10 I've had those groups on snowmobiles slow down, or maybe even just pull over and stop their engines and let us pass them.
Sure.
So there's some practices that just make it super nice out there. Shoot them a peace sign. The last person in each group, just confirm that happened just this weekend on our course. There's some snowmobiles came up, and I kept waving down the person. I just said, "Hey, are you the last snowmobile?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm the last one." And I'm like, "Cool, thank you for that. Have a great day." And then that way we knew we could ski down the hill and not see another snowmobile coming up. So
Sure.
Little etiquette pieces like that. We're coming down, and I told there was some snowmobiles at the bottom or some other people at the bottom, and I said, "Hey, I'm the last person, so as far as I know, you should be all good to go." And they're
That's
like, "Hey,
great.
thanks."
Yeah, and perfect. And just, it doesn't hurt to ask, "Hey, how you doing?" That's a very general question. But if somebody's in distress, they might tell you, "Hey, I need some help," or something like that too, so.
Nah, just keep that community.
Sorry, this camera died. I'm going to fire it up back up real quick. Hey, Anna, did that camera die? The wide angle?
It sure did, Bobby. It sure did.
It did?
It did, yeah.
I forgot to plug it in. It's my bad.
Oh, my goodness.
Anna, do you have that wide angle camera back? Camera 3? Sorry, that was my fault. God. You can dock my pay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, if you're in the backcountry, don't be afraid to just ask somebody, "Hey, how you doing?" We kind of touched on that. Just check in with people, man.
It's a community,
Everybody's going to be in a good mood back there, or they should be, right?
Because
yeah.
I mean, we do it at a bar, right? When you walk into a bar, you hop on a bar stool, and you more often than not, it depends on your personality, but you're chatting with the person next to you.
Yeah, you got to come back at night so you can have a drink or two, right? And then we can really get this conversation going.
Yeah. But I mean, do that on your tailgate. You
exactly.
roll into, and somebody's dog's running around. I mean, I'm a dog person, and I don't know many people in the backcountry that aren't dog people. But if somebody's dog runs up to me, I'm just like, "Hey, what's up, man?" What's his name?
Do you have a dog?
I used to. I had a golden retriever. He and I were rescue team with
Oh, really?
Rapid Avalanche Deployment, the CRAD. From 2005 to 2012, and he was a conversation piece. He was always running around. But I'm always like wanting to just meet people and build that community and just kind of keep it light and break the ice with folks. I think that's the best way to keep that culture healthy.
For sure. Yeah, no, I really think it is. And that's kind of when I refer to being old school, that's how Colorado used to be. Like you would wave at each other on the road, like. You don't see that much anymore, that sort of thing. But yeah, man, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Mike. We could spend hours and hours on this. So we're going to have you back in the future, and we're going to have some other people in from your school to help educate us on many different subjects.
Yeah, hit them up, man.
Yeah. But and we're in no rush to rush out of here. Is there anything that you want to close with, or anything else that you think people should know about Avalanche Safety that we didn't cover?
Just to reiterate this piece that we run into in every single course. There's no silver bullet. Right. If you're coming into a course, or even if you're just venturing into the backcountry, but if you're walking into one of these courses thinking you're going to get that key piece of information that's going to give you the key to the castle, and you can go get the goods, get that Instagram shot, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a big deal these days.
It's not there.
Is that you, by the way? That's a great shot, Anna.
No, I think that's
okay. Well, it should be.
But yeah, there's no silver bullet to this Avalanche thing. There's this idea that, there's a perceived hazard, and then there's a real hazard. Like, you can see the real hazard. If you're rock climbing, you're roped up because you're on a cliff. You can see the hazard.
Sure.
In the Avalanche realm, it's a dance kind of between, it's a real hazard. The conditions are such that it's pretty obvious. And then there's that perceived hazard where it's out there, but I don't know exactly where. Like, where's that trigger? I'm not sure. What are the consequences? So we're balancing that, and there's no silver bullet. It just takes some time, and again, that collective intelligence with your group.
Makes a lot of sense. Don't fall in that false sense of safety,
Yeah.
100%. So before we send you back up the mountain here, where can people find you if they have any questions? I'm sure that they can contact you through Apex Mountain School. And then if you can drop, Apex Mountain School's website, Instagram, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, apexmountainschool.com is the website for getting a hold of us there at the office. And, all the contact info's there. I'm kind of in the process of developing my own website. So it's in its infancy right now. Still learning how that works.
Is it up and live?
But
Or?
it is. Not really.
Okay.
There's nothing on there.
If you want to drop it on here, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But no, it's in its infancy. Maybe next time I'll have something for people to come look at. But yeah, just catch us through the school, and there's guide and instructor bios on that website. So I have a bio up there if you want to read that.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of instructors. I think there's at least 20 or something, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a good strong crew of folks. So yeah, just hit those bios, cruise through there.
So, and then you can find Apex Mountain School on Instagram as well. Is it at Apex Mountain School by chance? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Okay.
And I'd have to look it up here real quick.
Anna can look it up for us.
Yeah, but you can catch them on Instagram. Right now we're super busy with courses and everything, so we're doing our best to kind of keep that Instagram.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys carving out some time to come in and talk to us too. So
no worries, man. It was good. So
I was excited to have you guys. So,
but yeah, just hit us up. We got admin at apexmountainschool.com. Just shoot an email through there. That gets checked by 2 or 3 people. So
awesome. All right, Anna, were you able to find their Instagram handle?
Working on it now, Bobby.
Okay, thank you.
I can get it right here too. So I'm kind of new to this digital age. I'm a fly fish guide in the summertime, and so we're kind of
awesome. Where do you guide at?
Pushing that through Cutthroat.
Okay.
Yeah. So Cutthroat Anglers in Silverthorne.
Well, we'll have you back in the summer, and we'll talk about that a little bit too.
Do some fishing. Sure, you bet, man.
Yeah. Oh, Anna's got it right here. It looks
cool.
like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Apex Mountain School. Should be at Apex Mountain School probably.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Mike, thank you so much again. I really appreciate your time. I know you guys are busy this time of year. I urge anybody that wants some more education on any sort of backcountry stuff, go check out Apex Mountain School. It couldn't be nicer people. First time I called, it was an awesome experience. So yeah, check these guys out. Give them a follow on Instagram as well. And they got some awesome pictures up of them in the backcountry doing all kinds of different stuff. So it's definitely a cool page to follow as well. And everybody stay safe out there, all right?